Cyber Schlock.
Here we go. First one, baby. Trial periods.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, big trial periods. We don't know if this is going to work or not. Hopefully it will.
We just tried recording a long discussion. We were talking for about an hour and 40 minutes, and the audio wasn't.
Yeah, already. I mean, I was trying to think of a pun with problems and schlock, but it wasn't gonna happen. Schlocklands.
We are the Schlocklands.
I mean, today, as we said, is due films we hate, everyone loves. Films everyone loves that we hate.
That's what we're covering.
That's what we're covering. Let's start with films we love that everyone hates, because that's a lot more passive and less
less sort of intense, angry, depressing.
So first of all, what I've got written here there are quite a few Disney films here, but the first one, they're pretty much all Disney.
Oh, I thought you meant like The Lion King and stuff. I was like, you've been busy writing down.
No. First one we've got here are the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels. Literally one onwards of the 5.
Well, we were talking about this. I knew that 3 was universally sort of panned as an oddity and a strange film that's hard to follow. But I didn't know that 2. I thought 2 was well liked.
Well, yeah, 2 is quite clearly the best one of all of them.
Yeah, I think it is the best balance of everything.
But Pirates is a weird thing. Yeah, critics seem to hate it now. Audiences seem to even say that it's,
Well, since the 4th one, I think.
I mean, it's run its course, but people people just don't give that franchise a time of day and write it off just from hearing the title. And it's like, why? Watch these films.
They're fun. Well, 1's boring, largely boring. 2's,
I disagree with that, but
well, not completely dull, but it's compared to the others, it's boring. 2's the right balance. 3 is convoluted but entertaining.
Yeah.
4, I have never watched and probably will never watch. I'm sure it's fine though.
Yeah.
5, that is the matter.
5 is the main one, yeah. I mean, 2 and 3 are wrongly hated, in my opinion. Wrongly despised.
But I think with 2 and 3, they still have their defenders. Whereas with the 5th one...
The 5th one, I mean, the people we sort of know seem to like it, but general audiences have been horrible to number 5.
And critics.
Well, critics are always terrible to Pirates of the Caribbean. For no particular reason, you want a popcorn flick, go see Pirates of the Caribbean Salazar's Revenge.
We went to see it in the cinema together, and we were just giggling like morons. Just laughing.
We were, however, under the influence of a specific
herbal.
No. Yeah, completely illegal. Don't try this stuff at home. But we're trained professionals,
You'll get psychosis. I assure you.
Yeah, definitely.
Scary
Doesn't
stuff.
help your problems at all.
No.
Anyway, that's going off on a tangent. Number 5 was one of the best cinema experiences of the year, 2017. And we went to see loads in 2017. Yeah, it was still one of the best.
You just come out of it uplifted. When things are more flippant, sometimes it makes them funnier, more agreeable, more palatable,
Yeah.
Especially like a popcorn flick.
I love that they ditched the Jack Sparrow. His presence is lost in this film. He is now a drunk throughout the entire film.
Every other character sort of dislikes him.
Every character shows him how much of an idiot he is.
It may be in response to the whole Johnny Depp downwards spiral thing.
But I don't know. I mean, even for the production, how you'd expect the CGI to be bad, you'd expect it to be a bad-looking film, you'd expect scenes to have a different tone. None of that.
To be badly written, which is actually kind of not.
No, it plays up to exactly what you want from the film.
Yeah, and I mean, because 2 foreign directors were brought on board to do it. It has this strange, wacky, weird sensibility to it, to the dialogue and the jokes, and just how outrageous you take the action and the set pieces.
Yeah, and it's a very beautiful looking film. I think the scale of quite a lot of it is well done.
And the colour palette is nice. And yeah, the CGI is good. Look at Salazar's floating hair.
Salazar is brilliant CGI. Like, I didn't believe... Like, it's weird that I didn't not believe that was a real thing for a second. Yeah. But it's the same with David Jones. It's so real. I don't know what the CGI is for those films. But...
Well, it's because it's not trying to be photorealistic. It has a style to it.
Yeah.
It's sort of created above the real world, which I think is when CGI works best. The action is so fun. The guillotine scene.
Nothing yet. I mean, it's almost jump the shark worthy in terms of this is a bonkers film.
Jump the zombie shark.
Which is the peak of the film. I love that scene. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, some brilliant dialogue. Well, not brilliant, but just
right. It rides the line between being so sort of tasteless, and the character of Jack Sparrow at this point is just so crazy. It's weird that I thought I'd hate him as the film's gone on. Weirdly, I think he's sort of at the best he's ever been. He's bonkers.
He has no presence.
But that's what's so fun about it.
And any respect.
Well, I think if you're going 5 films in, that's the way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah. Make him washed up. Make him past his prime.
Yeah.
Like franchise.
He literally... I can't remember how it happens, but he falls into like a puddle of mud and just gets covered in all of this mud, and it's just like he is in the dumps in this film.
Chaos Scudelario, Effie from Skins, very likeable.
I mean the one problem is the Barbosa storyline.
Yeah, that's
with her character.
I mean, and his death made me feel nothing.
And that's
I don't
the
know
worst.
why they bothered to kill him off.
Why'd they bother to have him in it? Just leave him until you find a good story for that character, because that is a waste of the actor Geoffrey Rush and the character himself, Barbosa. It's just ridiculous.
And I don't really believe that Effie from Skins is his daughter.
No, especially because we've only just been introduced to Chaos Scudelario's character, and Geoffrey Rush has been in it since the first one, so as a villain, so it made no sense to me.
The final fight looks pretty bad.
Yeah, that's not the best, but up until that point everything is very solid in that film. I even like the stuff with David Wenham Faramir from Lord of the Rings being the British naval officer trying to track them down. It goes absolutely nowhere.
It's pointless. We were saying earlier, the film in a microcosm is that safe, the building sort of chase at the beginning with the safe in the building. The building's like rolling through the city. And then at the end of the action scene, they open the safe and it's empty. So it didn't matter. Who cares? But it was just fun. It was just a
and that's, I think that sums up the whole story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a bit of a laugh.
I'd call it harmless. I'd call it uninsulting, especially compared to a lot of these made by committee franchise films. It doesn't feel like that because the directors have this strange sensibility about the way the world is portrayed and how everything's sort of hyped up and very quirky and very odd, and it feels like it has heart and soul.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And audiences still pay to see it. It did really well at the box office, so I don't really think there was much to sort of hate about it, but still people were persistent on driving that franchise into the ground. It's more original and has more heart in it than most franchises nowadays, so I don't really get it.
Yeah. I think that'll be a recurring theme throughout this video is can you really be bothered to find the passion to hate that film?
Yeah,
is there any reason?
It's more, how were you sitting, say you saw number 5 in the cinema. How are you sitting in the cinema, either bored or genuinely disliking this film? Because there's nothing. It's not.
There's a few things. Podgy Orlando Bloom, portly.
Yes. Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
It might have been a mistake, but
Yeah, and the Davy Jones post-credit stinger just made
But we
everyone
didn't
happy.
even realise that was happening. We didn't even see that in the cinema. We just found
Oh
out
God,
afterwards.
did we?
No.
We found on YouTube. We were like, what is this? And what more do you want, really, than a film that just makes you giggle? Glee. You're gleeful. It's so crazy. You can't help but be swept up in just the nuttiness of it.
I know, it's just such a good ride, and we're not just saying that because we were slightly inebriated. We're saying that because
Although that probably is the optimum state to enjoy this.
yes, possibly. So, but something is different that not many people have noticed. Has nobody noticed the character of that film, like the sort of quirkiness of it all?
Oddball nature of it. Yeah, it does seem to have passed most people.
It's like nothing I've ever seen put to screen ever in terms of dialogue, wittiness.
And how far it goes, as far as you can go, and it keeps going for miles.
Yeah, and that's something that one movie in particular that we'll come up to later was missing tenfold.
Yeah. What's next?
So next on the list is a Sam Raimi film.
We'll put it with a Shane Black film because they are similar.
Yeah, we'll sort of put them together. They're both the third films of trilogies.
And one of them's the best of the three, and one of them is admittedly the worst.
But still good.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 3 and Iron Man 3.
Which should we talk about first? Spider-Man 3?
Yeah, go on.
Now, first things first. I understand, to a degree, why people have problems with this film. But I'd advise you to re-watch it, because I think you can get swept up in the sort of the echo chamber of negativity and forget the actual film's merit, you know what I mean, scene to scene.
Yeah.
If you sit down and re-watch it, you'll think, why was I so angry with this movie again?
Yeah, I mean, I think people just... It's one of those things where I think internet doesn't help with films like Spider-Man 3. Because, you just get told that it's a bad film and that it's cluttered
and again.
Over, you know what I mean, too much type thing. But if you actually watch the film and had no awareness of what was going on there, you wouldn't think anything of it. I think it's a solid film in terms of what it's trying to do. You could argue that it's cluttered, but I feel like every villain in that film is done quite well.
I don't know if I'd want to take any of them out. That's the thing. It's like if someone asked me which one would you remove, none of them.
No, because it's stuff like the Venom symbiote suit is a brilliant storyline, and it interweaves with the Sandman storyline and interweaves with Harry Osborn and all of that. It's the reason for everything. Yeah, for me it does.
Yeah.
But let's start with
Venom's badass.
Yeah, well, let's start with Venom then. Venom is brilliant in that film.
So much more interesting than the recent, design-wise, than the recent Sony Venom film.
Yeah, well, it's treated like an actual creature in terms of some big, dumb monster thing.
Yeah,
which I've never liked.
Groot, yeah.
It's a bit too comic-y. Doesn't work on screen.
In Spider-Man 3, it's a thing. It's a xenomorph.
It makes those noises, yeah. Yeah.
And that's so much cooler. That's so much creepier.
Yeah, I think the design is one of the coolest things ever.
The scene where he's ripping it off and all the tendrils.
Yeah. And then when it finally becomes this huge morphous creature, the alien side of it is done really well. I think that it's some kind of, it's got some sentience to it.
But at the same time, it's hard to understand. You know.
Yeah,
what I mean?
and yet people can say Topher Grace's ridiculous casting. It is to an extent, but I sort of prefer it to, because if they hadn't, I agree with that stuff when they show Topher Grace and then the rest of the body is Venom. That doesn't work as well. But had they just had him as Eddie Brock, who then gets possessed and doesn't ever appear as Eddie Brock again in his Venom, it would have worked brilliantly.
Yeah, and I like the idea of him being Peter Parker's dark side in a sense. Like he's also weedy and dweeby.
Dumb and dorky, and can't get the girl, can't get Gwen Stacy and stuff like that.
And that's more creepy. That's more sort of unnerving than a big Tom Hardy.
He's more broken, yeah. It makes more sense when he's in the church and praying for God to kill Peter Parker.
Like,
it sort of makes more sense.
This guy's unhinged.
And that whole sequence is brilliant. But, I mean, if there is one point I would have to say, Spider-Man 3 could have ended with that scene and Spider-Man 4 could have started with the rest onwards.
Yeah.
But, anyway...
it still works.
Yeah, and on the subject of Venom as a villain... Emo Spider-Man we've got to talk about, which I don't even think is that bad.
Why does everyone hate it? Is it because they think it's cheesy?
Do they think that it's not meant to be comedic?
That we were saying this earlier. Like when he's walking down the street to James Brown and stuff, do people think that's a misfire because it's quite obviously meant to be funny, or like? It has a comedy element.
And it contrasts brilliantly with when it does actually make him turn dark, and it does always... it contrasts brilliantly with when he does accidentally smack Mary Jane, and it's like, oh shit, something's changing.
Yeah, well, it's unnerving. It's like quite viscerally disturbing because he's not a badass, a dark badass. He's like a flawed, ugly human. It's more human in a way,
Yeah, exactly.
It is quite ugly, like psychologically, like.
But I love those storylines of sort of the good guy turning evil, or the good guy being something natural as well that you can believe. Like I believe that Peter Parker sort of finds this confidence that this suit has given him. It goes to his head, you know what I mean? It drives him a bit crazy. He's never experienced such a feeling before. Of power, yeah, and it would corrupt any soul, of course. And Peter Parker would not turn out like this horrible, do what I say. He'd be more goofy, and he'd still not be, desirable or anything.
He can't quite pull it off, kind of thing.
No, Sandman, brilliantly done.
I mean, it's a not a thin motivation. It's a simple story, but it just works. It's just so bad. It just works.
It works, and all of his emotional beats hit and touch. Yeah, and they shouldn't, but they do.
Sandman's creation scene
is brilliant.
Genuinely kind of beautiful.
It is. That
CGI.
The score is... His theme is the most touching thing. I don't know. It gets my heartstrings every time.
It's tender, isn't it? It's like that thing of, I know I did what I had to do, but I still regret it. Like, there wasn't really another option, but I still regret it. Like, it's that kind of stuff.
And I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm a monster, and I hate myself for that. You know.
I mean, you can't really give films like this themes, but that's the closest thing the film has to a theme is people turning into monsters, and that just it
always works. And it's like the scene where he goes to see his daughter who's in hospital, and his mum comes in, and his wife comes in, or his partner or whatever she was comes in, and she sort of angry at him and bitter at him. She's like, "Why are you here? You know what I mean? Get out!" And there's no place. You know what I mean? He's done it all to himself, and he knows that. But that doesn't make him any less of a person. He still cares for his daughter. Yeah, and he's still. It is really good characterization.
And it's economic. It doesn't drone on and on and on. You get it. One scene, bang. You get this guy. You know what I mean? And I like script writing like that. It's like, we don't need 6 scenes to establish this. Just bang.
Yeah, and it makes it more interesting because in ways that train fight scene in the underground, brilliant. It's like a reversal of fate. It's like, wait, is Spider-Man kind of being he's the one being bitter and horrible about this, and Sandman's the one who's just trying to get by.
That is a genuine flaw with the film, though, actually. Sandman, I'm pretty sure it's revealed that Sandman is the one who killed Uncle Ben.
Yeah, I mean, that shoehorned, but it makes sense for Spider-Man to... the reason it was done was for Spider-Man to, it was the thing that pushes him over the edge.
It just, doesn't work there.
It sort of doesn't work, but it's sort of interesting how he killed a man for nothing, and how it comes at that point that he finds out and sort of realises that.
They don't really touch on it, though.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, Harry Osborn.
Harry Osborn, the final villain, brilliant arc across all 3 films.
Yeah. I mean, can you really fault that?
No, and one of the better than any MCU fight scene is that first fight scene where he fights. Yeah. Peter Parker.
How good is the idea of the wedding ring adding like extra jeopardy to like this is an extra goal, you know? Keep.
Yeah. There's an objective to the fight which I've always appreciated.
And his death works.
Yeah, his death's really good. That fight scene with Peter Parker coming into his house, and it's sort of really sort of grounded and gritty. There's no powers being used. It's just punches and cuts everywhere, and they're bleeding by the end of it. And it's there's something so visceral, and you can imagine him having a change of heart after his face is sort of scorched in half.
Gwen Stacy is unnecessary, but they were going to use her in the next film. So.
But there's a good set piece with her being saved from the building.
Yeah, that's quite good. And it's clever how Peter Parker, when he's got his big ego, asks Gwen Stacy to recreate the upside down kiss, and then Mary Jane sees that, and I think that'll work.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes up later and stuff.
I mean, Mary Jane isn't the best, but she's not really the best in that whole trilogy. She's kind of the weakest element of that trilogy, but it was a different time.
I think she serves the role that she's supposed to serve, and she does it very well.
Sure, I mean, you couldn't get away with it nowadays.
Spider-Man 3 I still enjoy every time I watch it, and I've seen it a lot. Like, I've seen that film so many times.
The thing is, it's not better than Spider-Man 1. But
or
I would
2.
Rather... Well, yeah, that goes without saying. But I'd probably rather watch Spider-Man 3 than Spider-Man 1.
Yeah.
Just in terms of, like, flicking through scene-to-scene basis, there's more there in Spider-Man 3.
There's so much going on in Spider-Man 3. I really think, as a film, of course we could have had... It would be nice to have that story fleshed out even longer. But as a 2-hour, 30-minute fun film, it is non-stop. There's no way you can be bored.
But it's the third of the trilogy. You kind of want all-out action, all-out craziness from start to finish. You know what I mean? The next 3... Iron Man 3, the best Iron Man film.
I have to say, and whilst I love the first Iron Man film, I still think it's one of the best MCU films. Iron Man 3 has that character and edge that makes it so different.
That tone, that uniqueness, that I hate the word vision, but just that edge.
And a tone that doesn't conform to MCU. It doesn't conform to repeating the same things that we've seen in the MCU, and
it's kind of like The Last Jedi in a sense, in terms of this is going the way you think, and then it just
and I just think after the Avengers, that kind of film was needed. A kind of Iron Man 3 type story was needed. A very intimate,
self-contained
character piece, really, because the whole story is just him finding out, is he Tony Stark or is he Iron Man, or are they one, or am I? You know what I mean? That's the whole.
And then obviously you reintegrate the last line from Iron Man 1 in a very clever way to end this film. I am still Iron Man without the suit, and that all works well. You know, that works well.
And Age of Ultron killed it completely. But
it did.
Iron Man 3 as a film, despised. I mean, it was liked by critics, which was good.
Of course it was, though. Like, it would just be comic fans who led the charge in. And
it just seems like any old MCU fan would just take any other MCU film over Iron Man 3, and I just don't get it, because...
What is actually bad about it? Okay, the Mandarin. Good twist. It serves the story. It's not a twist for the sake of a twist. It's funny. It's clever. It dodges a few issues that the Mandarin raises. And if it means we never get to see the Mandarin with his magic rings... fine, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been cool had they been able to incorporate the Mandarin now, make him cosmic and stuff. That would have been cool.
They could do it now, yeah.
But at the time, that's not what we needed. It was very Earth-focused, it was very real. Shane Black, clearly a black comedy writer, he's not going to be able to... It's just not going to work, him doing the Mandarin with cosmic powers.
I love the panic attack aspect of that movie.
Yeah.
I think the performance from Robert Downey Jr. is so fucking sublime in terms of those scenes where he's panting and like he keeps holding his shoulder. He has like a tick, and you're gonna maybe freak out.
Ironman is Shane Black was made to write Robert Downey Jr.'s dialogue, and Tony Stark he'll never be beaten. His character in that film is the best it's ever gonna go to.
I think so.
There's just so much.
Pepper Potts is good in that movie.
Yeah, all of the characters are good. War Machine's very enjoyable in that film.
Yeah, he's kind of the best he's ever been.
Aldrich Killian's not bad at all. The kid is done really well.
Even the kid works, yeah.
Because there's no father-son dynamic with Tony Stark and that kid.
Yeah.
It's literally being realistic to the character. I've used you for what I want to do. Now I'm fucking off. I've got better things to do. I've got money. I've got power. Why would I? Why would you care for a kid?
You're just gonna leave me like my dad? Yeah.
Yeah. Just tried up, and he's seen once in the rest of the whole film, very briefly, but it's not really wrapped up, and that's the best thing about it because Tony Stark's not that kind of person.
No, and that's what makes that relationship work. Is Tony Stark treats him like an adult. So it's weirdly respectful in a strange way. Because he's not watering things.
Yeah, Tony Stark doesn't give a shit. He'll just say whatever to anyone.
Yeah. Every single action scene in that film is brilliant.
Yeah.
There's not a bad one.
No, I love the scene where the penthouse gets bombed. That's directed really well.
It's awesome. The slow motion. That's good use of slow motion.
Yeah. And putting like the suit on Pepper Potts. That's a really good idea.
That is a satisfying shot, isn't it? It's just sort of, you feel that. The sky dive, where they actually got skydivers to film it when the people are falling out of the plane.
It's insanely good. It's very superhero-y.
Sort of blows you away as well, The final action scene is so much more interesting than usual superhero movie third act scenes. He's jumping through all his different suits, and they all do different functions. They've all got different, and he's using them to do clever different things. Yeah. And the scenes where he's just Tony Stark out of the armour and he's got his gadgets.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
He needs to actually use his brain instead of just zapping
and
things.
It's fine that you see Tony Stark being, Tony Stark for the whole film, basically.
Yeah, which I love.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Because Iron Man's not a character. Iron Man just looks cool.
We need to care about the character first and the superhero second.
Yeah. And if you don't agree, I don't care.
Yeah, Aldrich Killian's quite cool. I love the direction that he used to be awkward, disabled, freak of nature. And then he became very handsome, very rich, very powerful. And through a completely believable and interesting storyline, Extremis. I don't even mind it. I think it's really cool.
No.
It makes a lot of sense. Ex-military people, he says he lies basically and says he can regenerate them, which he can, but basically turns them into genetic freaks.
Crazy superpower.
I really don't have any flaws, any criticisms with
I can't really name one.
For me, that's exactly what I want, When I
go to the cinema and see a superhero movie, what more could you ask for? Really, what more could you ask for? What is your problem with it, people? Again, it's like Spiderman 3. I think people might have got swept up in the hate, and I'd advise them to rewatch it.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be really crazy as well, Iron Man 3. It's realistic, black comedy, superhero film.
Character stuff,
Character stuff, based in America. I mean, it's just, what do you expect? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't have the Mandarin, it wouldn't make sense. Iron Man 3 is still, to this day, better than most of MCU, and people don't want to admit it. It's less repetitive, it's more original, it has more tone.
It's more stylish.
Yeah.
And I don't mean visual style, I mean writing style.
Just you get an impression of what it is. It stands alone and it is confident.
This is the product. This is what you're going to see.
Alright, next film I've put down, we can just briefly skim over this though. The Lone Ranger. You haven't seen it, but I've seen it. And I just think it's an absolute travesty. Just because it bombed and just because, it doesn't... It might be It may have been done for cash reasons and may have been created off of the back of franchises like Pirates of the Caribbean, does not mean that the film itself, when you watch it for 2.5 hours, is not an enjoyable film.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that one action scene on the train, and that just looks like stupid, crazy fun to me. It's kind of like Pirates 5. It's like, how can you not sort of grin, crack a smile?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to enjoy in that film. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I'm biased to the Western genre. I think as a kid, especially a young kid seeing that film, I would have been playing that action sequence for weeks on end.
What do you think about Johnny Depp with a bird on his head?
I think Tonto's a very good performance and very well characterised, and it has some amazing moments. I mean, I haven't seen it for a long, long time, but there is some weird sort of trippy-esque, dreamy, surreal flashback stuff with Tonto.
See, just because of what everyone says, I would have assumed the film was a lot more boring.
No, it isn't, not at all. I mean, you can argue it does go on a bit too long.
I'm sure it does, to be honest.
But it's a big, standalone, epic, huge, fun as well. Nothing about it takes itself seriously.
This is the recurring theme. This is the key word. These are just fun,
simple films. Yeah. It has the right mix of sort of those blockbustery elements of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, but also being like a western at the end of the day. Yeah. And it's really exciting.
Tarantino, you've told me this before.
Yeah, Tarantino, well, he's an advocate for that film. And so anyone who likes Tarantino, if you haven't seen The Lone Ranger, go out and watch The Lone Ranger, because Tarantino has said previously that it was one of his favourite films of that year, thought it was horrible that the critics and everyone started hating on it, thought there was no indecency in that film whatsoever. And that's the thing, people reacted as if there was something, to be disliked, something that's inherently wrong in the fact that this film is here. The villains are bizarre. We've never had a villain who, one of them is fairly normal, is a sort of Western bandit type who killed the brother of the main character. One of them is an American Civil War sort of officer type, sword and hat and debonair, played by Barry Pepper. And then the main villain is the man who's creating the train tracks, the train systems to the whole. Yeah, he's a corrupt sort of
tycoon.
Corrupt tycoon. I mean, it's got all of those Western elements.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah,
it's a pretty good main villain.
Yeah, it's got all of those Western elements, all of those blockbustery elements, and if you love the two, which I do, it's perfect. I had a very good time, and my dad really enjoyed it as well.
It is one of those films that you would sit down and watch with your parents, really, isn't it? Just slap it on.
Yeah. Next on the list, another Disney film, Solo: A Star Wars Story.
Yeah, okay, so, again, right, we should probably say this about, every film. Love and hate are strong words. I did not love this film.
No, neither did I. I mean, I give it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, solid 7. I really don't get the vitriol, though. I really don't.
People are bitter over The Last Jedi when they have no right to be.
No. We should probably say that we both really like The Last Jedi. Alden Ehrenreich gives a completely good performance.
The best performance of the whole film.
Yeah, almost definitely.
There's not even a bad line, a bad scene with him in. Genuinely.
I mean, he's likeable.
He is very likeable, and the whole first 20 minutes really set in stone. You didn't think this was Han Solo? This is Han Solo. Yeah, Believe that this is the same character, and I did from the first scene, I'm pretty sure.
I really loved the first 20 minutes. I love Lady Proxima.
And all of that chase through the tunnels and stuff, and through...
Yeah. Lady Proxima's very Star Wars to me.
Yeah.
He pretends to have a bomb and it's a rock and he goes and just makes a clicking like that. That's fun, That's got a tone to it.
And the stuff where he joins the Empire and it shows the war on the ground rather than in space or...
Because the problem with the original trilogy is you get what the Empire is, but you don't really get the sort of you know what I mean when I say real world.
But this is
the in-universe, real-world ramifications of what they're doing.
Yeah, I think the thing with Star Wars is it's always been, and it's because it's part of the story they tell. It's that it's interplanetary, it's intergalactic. Whereas this film, because it's such a small little side story, says no, there are genuinely individuals involved in this. People, Wookiees, people.
Even the fact that we see like an Empire recruitment ad, that just instantly grounds them. Now I sort of know how people view them.
And when there are the people who are slaves on the planet later, I can't remember what it's called, and the Wookiees there, and it bonds with Chewbacca, and it's just stuff like that. We need that in Star Wars. If we had just had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I wouldn't mind it. But also, you would be missing out on the stuff that this film especially does. Donald Glover is half trying an impression of Billy Dee Williams and half trying to do his own thing, but it doesn't ever really. Also, the writing's not as good for his characters.
Aaron gives it a bit of his own little spin. He's not trying. He probably knew you can't live up to Harrison Ford, so he's just trying to capture the sort of overall feel of the character. Whereas Donald Glover really is just talking like Billy Dee Williams. I mean, I saw this interview. It's very telling. Donald Glover sat down with Billy Dee Williams before principal photography, and he started asking questions such as, how does Lando feel about being one of the only black people in the galaxy? And Billy Dee Williams said, he doesn't think about it. It's not our universe. He's just a smooth...
That's crazy. That is crazy. It just annoys me how people accept some things, a lot of things, that are worse than this film and trying to do things that are worse. This film at no point has an agenda, at no point has some kind of unnecessary forced, maybe the Darth Maul cameo, but other than that,
I sort of pretend that didn't
happen. Than that, has nothing forced about it. It's just a simple story.
Even L3, even though that is sort of commenting on not our world, but social justice stuff. It's played for laughs, and I think if it wasn't played for laughs, you couldn't get away with it.
It's done the right way.
Because it's a snarky little gag, I think it kind of works.
What about Tobias Beckett's character?
Well, it's just Woody Harrelson being Woody Harrelson with a wig.
But I mean, the reveal of him being a villain and the climax.
I see it coming. I did know that the door was going to open and it would be Woody Harrelson standing there.
See, I didn't always think that.
Did you not?
No.
I like that Han Solo just shoots him mercilessly and
it's a western. It's the most westerny part of the film where it all climaxes to a very simple two-man scene. One guy gets shot.
I like Enfys Nest. I think Enfys Nest is pretty badass. Badass look.
Brilliant
badass
theme.
Badass theme.
Yeah.
The teenage reveal is strange, and I don't really get what the point of it is. But I mean, it's something different.
But that's the thing. I think that's the main thing I liked about this film. How can you not want or pay to see a Star Wars film that isn't Skywalkers and lightsabers? Yeah. There are no lightsabers in the whole film. It's brilliant. It's genuinely, it's fresh air. It's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. And I think it's probably a mistake to cancel the anthologies, because if they move away from these legacy characters like Han Solo and just do throwaway space adventures that happen to be in this universe, they could have something. They could have something.
Like The Mandalorian could be very good for that reason.
Yeah, if they have no fucking references to
but they got anything, they can do anything with that show.
I don't love this film. I just think it gets far too much hate.
And one of the best things is it's very light-hearted. It's a romp. It treats itself like that.
There's not really a particularly dark moment, and I kind of appreciate it.
Chewie and Han's chemistry is really, really good. Their first scene where they meet is really good.
Yeah, it's cute. It's kind of sweet. I don't have a problem with it.
It's got a lot of heart to it, and for a film in production hell, that's brilliantly pulled off. I didn't even realise that any of it seemed any different.
It's not like a Fan Four Stick where it's a
Suicide Squad.
Yeah, where it's like a Frankenstein film. It does all hold together and add up quite well. But fun enough movie.
And not a reason to boycott every Star Wars piece of media that comes out. When they start getting bad, then you boycott it. But I've not seen a bad film since Disney Star Wars.
Rogue One's the worst one.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of boring. It's not bad.
It's not bad. And it's certainly not insulting to its audience or fan base or... and I'm saying this as a huge, lifelong Star Wars fan. It's just not insulting.
I think people who want to boycott the franchise because of The Last Jedi and Solo need to adjust their sort of expectations.
Yeah.
Things could be 10 billion times.
I think if you're boycotting this, you should have boycotted MCU.
Yeah.
Or you should have boycotted every DCEU film that comes out. It just doesn't compute to me. Or Pirates. Exactly. Why do this to Star Wars, which has always put effort into its films, to be fair?
Yeah. I mean, they fucking need to. You know what I mean? They've got guns to their fucking faces.
Yeah.
Get over yourself. Solo's fine.
Honestly, get over yourself. If you are wasting your time to actively boycott a franchise that isn't even doing anything wrong. Yes, this is the flip side where we might get a bit angry.
Heated.
And, disgruntled.
It's only out of passion.
It is only out of passion. Should we start with Mission Impossible 6?
Yeah.
Which is... This
one's so boring that I don't even think we can shout about it.
Yeah, but the problem is, for me, I would be like, fine, you know what? It was boring for me, but it's at least it's not the worst film I've ever seen. But when I went onto YouTube after watching the film and heard everyone from Movie Bob to Chris Duckman to Jeremy Jahns saying literally the same phrase, which was the best action film I've seen in years.
What are you talking about?
Genuinely, what are you talking about? I mean, literally just type up action films and every single action film that comes up will just be better. It doesn't make sense.
Not even better, but just more. There'll be more.
More cohesive, more characterful.
More interesting, more characterful.
Actually, an action film, which this film isn't. It rides the line between being an action film, but is also that kind of...
film.
It does that kind of... the worst part about the Fast and Furious franchise is when it acts like you care about what's going on outside of the action.
Yeah.
But luckily...
To its credit, it rarely does.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Luckily, it doesn't happen too much. There's the odd family line, but not too much dialogue. This film, so much dialogue, so much time not doing anything remotely towards the action of an action film.
Engaging or pulse racing or...
What's the point? What's the point? We don't care about anything else.
About the plot. No one cares about the villain. I have no idea what the villain's name was. I have no idea what any of Tom Cruise's teammates mean to him
because
or do it.
It's changed now. I mean, you could argue it could have been cool if they went in a more spy direction, then yes, that would have been cool. But it's not even a spy franchise anymore. This film is trying to do what Fast and Furious does, but ultimately just ends up bland, boring.
The action is few and far between. I mean, there are good. The skydiving scene's cool. The bathroom fistfight is probably the peak.
But the action's all you're waiting to happen, and it's so sparse as you said. I mean, it's just nauseating.
Grounded in kind of a bad way, you know, like stuff that could actually happen in the world. Like, there's no death-defying stunts.
And it's like you get hints at parts that these characters are supposed to be caricatures. But then it treats itself too seriously to do. Like Henry Cavill, you get hints that he's Machiavellian, British villain, moustache and stuff like that. But then you get these beats where they're trying to treat him like he's an actual character, and it's like that's
person that you'd encounter.
I just don't. I don't get it. I don't get what this film is trying to do.
And Henry Cavill's the best character purely because he looks cool. I mean, I think that's the only reason.
And can I just say, if it's supposed to be the best action film of the past few years, the best part of an action film is that you feel the action. There are stakes. There are stakes. There is adrenaline running through yours and the characters' bodies. There's real emotion to it. There's no emotion in this film. It's kind of when you eat something, expecting the texture to be one thing, but then
and it's something.
It's a lot, and you're not repulsed. You're more just like, right. That's weird. You know what I mean? That's a weird touch.
I remember. We turned to each other and we were sort of half-heartedly smiling, and I could tell that we were both trying to be like, "Oh, this is so fun."
Yeah, I really wanted to. That's the
about
thing.
halfway through. I think we both started to realise, this is really boring. These characters are just, they keep talking, but I don't really know what they're talking about or why we need to see this dialogue. You know,
just no actor gets to portray any semblance of a character.
I mean, Ethan Hunt is an embarrassingly shallow character.
Yeah.
It's just Tom Cruise. It's just Tom Cruise's ego. That's what Ethan Hunt is as a character.
It's just disappointing. It should be action throughout, really, with
And
very, very loose characters.
There's the
scenes
helicopter
between.
chase at the end, right? And there's this bit where Henry Cavill crashes his helicopter and falls out onto the cliff. And I turned to you in the cinema and I was like, how did he survive that? And you were like, oh, it's a film. The reason I was asking that question is because the film takes itself so fucking seriously and is sort of real world grounded that you start thinking those things. You shouldn't be thinking those things.
I know.
You should be like, oh, fun action film, but it's not written like a fun action film. It's written like a dark contemporary spy thriller. I just think it was the wrong way to go.
Yeah, same. Disappointing. It's the only word I have to say.
I wanted to like it.
Again, I wouldn't even. I don't hate it, and I don't have that passionate feelings about it. It is just purely from the fact that I don't know how people call it an amazing action film.
No.
How that's even. I've only seen the fourth Mission Impossible, and that was miles ahead of this one.
I love, that's the Dubai one, right?
Yeah. Where he has to climb the tower. Yeah.
See, that's what you want, really. That's just a lot more fun. We should talk about the last scene.
The abrupt ending.
Really abrupt ending. Crossed over. But
which was the epitome of the film, underwritten. They don't need to wrap anything up because there was nothing to wrap up.
But I didn't even get fulfilling action scenes. So what did I just sit through? What did I just waste my time?
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
I got one or two thrills, but minor thrills. And maybe we're just desensitized to it in this modern age, but
I don't think so, because all of the... I don't know. There are so many good, fun, dumb action films that come out, or adventure films, or anything that I've enjoyed a lot more. Mission Impossible 6.
People say it's the best action film of the last couple of years. Compare this to Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
A film with actual personality.
We should move on to the next film. Came out this year, a few months ago. Spike Lee.
Yeah.
Black KKK Klansman. Blackkklansman.
Yeah.
Now again, this is similar to Mission Impossible. We don't hate this film.
No. And again, we went into it really wanting to like it, you know.
Yeah.
The problem this film has can be put down to one word, and that's tone. The tone is all over the place. I think that's the big issue here.
Well, it's such a thin, light story that has been treated as if it has more weight than it actually does.
As if it's the most meaningful thing ever.
Just because it's got KKK and a black person in doesn't mean that automatically it has to be politicised and/or an event type thing. It's not that at all. The problem again, like Mission Impossible, is I would have no problem with this film if people liked it. That's fine, but my problem comes from the fact that in how many months now, sort of 4 or 5 months, it is going to be nominated either for Best Picture or one of the best performances, possibly Best Director. And if it's Best Director, that's the worst of all of them, because the direction of this film is bland as all hell and nonsensical.
It's not bland,
but it's bland because it means nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of bad though. Like,
it is genuinely
bad. There are shots that are out of focus, for one thing, and we don't usually nitpick technical aspects. but there are shots that are just.
There was a bit, 10 minutes in the cinema, and I was going into this film really wanting to like it, because I don't usually go to see any films like this, because usually I think they're overly political and stuff. But I turned to you and said, oh, this is badly mixed, I can't hear what they're saying. You were like, oh, it's out of focus as well.
The staging is wooden and awkward.
And everything's so claustrophobic.
There's this scene where they're just walking along a bridge, talking, and it's a really fucking wide shot.
Yeah. Out of focus again, like dreamy kind of looking. Just
slowly tracking from left to right for about, what would you say?
2 minutes.
4 minutes, 3 minutes. 4 minutes.
And in that whole scene, the dialogue, if you pay attention to it, is only referencing black films at the time. Yeah. And it's fun. It's fun. They pop up on screen, the posters.
Popping up.
It's fun for 10 seconds. And then it goes on and on. And I was just sitting in disbelief. I was like, I'm not even going out of my way to dislike this film. This is staring me in the face. You know what I mean?
The whole film. It's like the speech. It's like the Black Empowerment speech.
Oh my God.
The head of the society gives.
Starts off brilliant.
3 minutes, lots of passion. It's getting you going, you know. And then it keeps going.
And then it keeps going. And there's not even a pause. There's not even a pause for another character to interject a line or anything like that.
Say something, yeah.
This is a script. This is not an actual speech. And then when it goes on too long, it becomes an actual speech. It becomes a lecture. And you're not lecturing anyone.
Yeah, and then you feel like you're being preached to. And you kind of resent the fact that Spike Lee feels that he has to preach this.
I'm not a racist, and I didn't come into this film expecting, you know, my views, my political views on race to be, you know, challenged or talked to directly. It's a film!
Everyone hates the KKK already, so I really don't.
It was bizarre. It services the story, yes, for 2 minutes.
Yeah, to a degree.
But it goes on, and clearly what Spike Lee is trying to do is to hammer home this idea that he's, you know, bigger than film, that he can include politics into his films. And he's done it before with Malcolm X, but the difference was Malcolm X is a biopic about an influential man in this environment, whereas this film is using a fairly benign story of
but
race.
If they played up to the banality of the story, it would really work.
That's what I think, but they make it this statement.
It's grandiose.
They try to act like, you know, it has something to say. It doesn't have anything to say. I've seen this message done 1,000 times before and better. No, the KKK were done really well in this film. Well, they're one of the best parts.
Because I like the idea that they're portrayed not as like, well, they are evil, they're bad people, but they're portrayed as like sort of bumbling and mundane, and they're really sort of stripped of any threat, you know what I mean? Which is how they should be, you know, expose these what they actually are. But that doesn't sit well with the really melodramatic elements of the film, you know what I mean? It's that weird clash of like banality, complete banality, and really over the top drama that just doesn't pick one or the other, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is confused, and the whole film comes to this climax of one explosion, which is not a good scene at all.
It's poorly shot.
Again, I thought it was badly staged.
And the soundtrack doesn't work.
The tone doesn't work, and then if it wasn't enough, you're thinking, oh no, but I mean, I had my problems. But it's just a simple little film at the end of the day. And then Spike Lee decides, no, this isn't a simple film. This is a statement. Spike Lee wedges the knife in the last 10 seconds.
It's real-world, horrific news footage of a very violent hate crime in which someone was actually murdered in real life. It's shoved in your face right at the end of the film. In a very it's very, very tasteless.
I remember.
I was horrified, and I get that that's what Spike Lee wants, but it's like, have a bit more respect.
And I remember thinking just before it happened, oh, I can look past that. I'm not going to say it's awful. But you know, it's good, it's fine. But then that happened as I was getting out of my seat, and I was staring in disbelief. And I just remember saying, "Fuck that," and shaking my head, and I was genuinely angered and kind of hurt because I think it's kind of obnoxious and rude and entitled for him to have done that. Because it's easy, anyone can do that. Anyone can slap.
It's empty shock value.
Yeah, it is. It's just trying to get a reaction, and that's not what film is about. That's your film. That little bit on the end of it has nothing to do with that. That little bit on the end of it is acting like this was more than a film. Yeah, well, let's face it, like we've mentioned on SchlockGANG, we hate pretentious people. Spike Lee, you are a pretentious arsehole. And I don't want anyone to give you the time of day because you think you can pull the wool over people's eyes and act like you're more intelligent. You're not. You're not any better than anyone else. And you don't have any different views to anyone else.
Well, that's the other thing. Who's coming out of this film going, oh my god. It all makes sense.
That was powerful.
The KKK are bad.
He had to do that to try and seem different and try and seem more intelligent, and it just comes off as rude.
Like, I don't even know if I can give it a rating because it's not really a movie.
It's not film. What are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to laugh? Is the drama? I don't really feel that the drama has any weight to it either.
Well, there's not much drama. It's quite a banal story.
I think the best scene is the dance scene.
That's got character. Borderline tasteless in parts.
Yeah, but that's enough about Blackkklansman. It's now sort of the big meaty one, the one why we started this video in the entire first place, and I'm sure people weren't expecting Blackkklansman to come up or stuff like that. But this one, I don't think anyone will expect because I've never heard a bad word about it other than between us two.
That's the thing. Everyone worships at the altar of this film. And I'm not quite sure why, but I have a suspicion that it's because watching this film made them feel clever. I think that might be, but it is a ruse. It is a ruse.
And this film is
Blade Runner
2049.
Yeah.
Where do we even start? I mean, the direction. I'm not gonna,
should we just start by sort of doing the prerequisite, just going down the list?
The direction's good. The soundtrack is very good.
Good soundtrack. Good cinematography.
The performance is very good.
Good set design.
The dialogue in parts is interesting. Neander Wallace is a cool character. That's about it.
All the problems in this film, the production is amazing. All of the problems come from the script.
Yeah.
They're all at a narrative level, at a story level.
And the main thing is, as much as you think directing's cool, and this film, wow, it may look nice. Oh, that's cool. That's huge. That's big. Ridley Scott did the same thing and made a film. This film is, and it sounds ridiculous to say when I love the Pirates films, love Iron Man 3. This film is the most vapid film I've ever seen. It has no substance to it whatsoever.
About the original Blade Runner, in terms of, so that film has big, heavy themes, right?
Yeah.
About AI, humanity, but that's not the point of the movie.
No.
The point of the movie is the detective story of Deckard.
Yeah, Deckard.
Going after these rogue replicants that have gone crazy and are starting to kill humanity. There's your story.
Yes.
There's your story. And the themes about humanity and AI, that's incidental. That comes from the story they're trying to tell.
Exactly.
But they reverse engineered that, I think, a little bit with Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, so this whole film, Denis Villeneuve, I was sceptical that they were even making a sequel in the first place.
Yeah.
Just, it's an iconic film and
if there was
never deserved a sequel.
It didn't need a sequel.
Yeah, but Denis Villeneuve, very, very good director. Promising as well, because he said his favourite film was Blade Runner. He wants to service it. But did he only watch the Tears in the Rain scene? Is that all he saw of the film?
It's like instead of watching it, he watched a video essay on the themes.
Yes. But the themes of that film, and the reason that film is so good, is because it's the subtext is so strong in that film. You don't realise throughout the whole film how powerful these themes are until the climax.
Bang, the Tears in the Rain speech, and everything's tied up, and it hits you, and the plot and the themes.
And it was a lovely story with a great main character and a great love interest and a good romance.
Great villain.
A very fun set design and good 3 acts. And then there's this film which has a dud main character.
It's an alright main character.
It's a dud main character because the character has no ending. And people have argued, maybe it's about him finding out how human he is or not human he is. And it is up until a point, but this is 2 acts of a 3-act film, or 1 act.
It feels like the 3rd act has been amputated. It's like when Joy gets crushed. So you introduce my favourite character, probably the best character, Joy, the most endearing.
Yeah.
And then, bang. Crushed, killed, gone, doesn't appear again, doesn't get a wrap up, and it's that thing of this is real world. This is how it actually goes.
It's not real world.
You don't come back. But this is a screenplay.
This is a screenplay. It's
screenplay.
It's not. It's not Alejandro Jodorowsky. I mean, and even saying that, he's surrealist, but he still has a 3-act structure and still tells a story. You have Denis Villeneuve, and I don't know who wrote the script, but he obviously had power in the story.
Yeah.
Using his amazing skills at directing and amazing composition to create shots as a means to blind the viewers to what is essentially a story about nothing with no end and no intention to wrap up a story.
He is pulling the wool over people's
Definitely.
eyes. And the Neander Wallace is a microcosm of all of this. That character is sort of the problems with this film put into one.
And the worst part is that character is written so well when he's in it. Here we have a villain that isn't a villain and ultimately becomes a supporting character, which doesn't make sense because it's not written like a supporting character. It's written like a villain. You have
a big, grand villain.
You have the henchman of the villain being the climax of the film.
The main villain by the end.
When she's trying to work for Neander Wallace, so I suppose she's dead and Neander Wallace carries on. Either way,
it's confusing. So I had sort of maybe pushed it out of my mind. And I asked you, does Neander Wallace get any sort of conclusion scene, any sort of wrap up? You were like, yeah, he gets a confrontation. I was like, oh no way. You're like, with Harrison Ford.
Yeah, the wrong character.
That's wrong.
Harrison Ford's little subplot is, just to be reunited with his daughter. Kate, that's fine. He needs to reunite those two. But that is not wrapping up his character arc of whether he's human, whether he can feel.
That's not what he's.
It has nothing to do with that. If he had, the only way you can deal with that character arc, literally face to face, and it be fulfilling, is to have him face his creator, Neander Wallace. And
Wallace to expose.
Yeah, I always had the idea of him being tortured and ripped apart, and Neander Wallace in his crazy godlike state is, admiring his creation basically, and proving to his creation that. You're nothing more than what I made. You're this. This is all there is.
Joy could have been killed off in that scene.
Exactly, and it just makes so much more sense.
Artificial, your love is artificial, your body's artificial, you're not a human being.
Yeah.
Then our main character has their end of Act 2 low point, their crisis of faith, and then he reunites Harrison Ford with his daughter.
And that's fulfilling.
Proves his humanity and that he can affect human emotions and can bring people together. Not like proves his exterior humanity, but proves his humanity to himself.
Yeah, because he needs to, and dies with that, and he knows he's going to die, but he needs to do that before, because otherwise Neander Wallace is right. Otherwise Neander Wallace is right in saying that he doesn't have any power in this world other than what Neander Wallace has given him. But Neander Wallace did not give him the power to,
They almost do that. They're like scratching at the surface.
With 2 acts, as I said, that's what they're leading towards, but it never goes there.
Nothing. And also, we said, as he was dying, looking up into the snow, should have seen Neander Wallace's little spaceship going off world
Exactly.
to stop its replicant colony, because then, bang, both stories wrapped up. And then you still get that aspect of, they didn't stop the villain, Neander Wallace is still out there, but both you feel like the endings of both stories are converging at the same time.
Yeah.
Neander Wallace just disappearing off screen for the last.
It's shockingly crazy. I've never seen a film. It's so long, so mind-numbingly long, and nothing. It doesn't need to be that long because there's nothing to it. It didn't need to be a film.
So thin.
If you're never going to wrap up a film, don't make it.
Well, people keep saying, don't they? Blade Runner 2049 is weird and too slow and too long and doesn't wrap up because it's a Blade Runner film. The first one is really quite conventional.
Yeah, it's 3 acts. It's, I'm pretty sure, less than 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's...
And there is that infamous zoom and enhance scene where Harrison Ford is sitting there saying zoom and enhance, zooming in on a photo, and for some reason it goes on for like 15 minutes, and that's not good.
It doesn't, you know, just go all over the place like this one does. There's a random scene with, you know, Lenny James from The Walking Dead, and he goes to like find that horse in that factory place. Just goes on for tedious amounts of minutes.
It's just shots of him walking through rooms
for nothing.
Like, people really are just taking the piss. There is no reason I should be sat here watching this. Like,
it's ridiculous.
No information. There is no information being gained, and I don't usually think about films in such a cold manner. But this film sort of forced me to start thinking about something.
Well, it's because it's disgusting, and then people turn around, and the majority now think, from what I've heard, it's better than the original. Well, guess what?
Not in a million years.
Ridley Scott's direction is better. The soundtrack was better.
His storytelling is much better.
But the direction is just better because this one was taken directly from the direction of Ridley Scott. Yeah. But that's all there is to it. If it's all like, just his shot.
Ridley Scott's direction dialed up to fucking 50,000, you know what I mean?
And just because you've got that sound, just because it's a memorable cinema experience, which it was, the sound was amazing and it looked visually pleasing.
The visuals were brilliant.
I left that film depressed and angry because that's not a film. Like Spike Lee, it's pulling the wool over people's eyes. It's lying to their audience. It's saying that, you know, it doesn't need to be a film as long as it looks good and sounds good.
And has heady themes. Now,
it has a theme. A theme means nothing without the story to back it up.
Well, yeah, people get a bit confused with themes. If you love themes and you want them to be above narrative, front and centre, fine. I don't think you should be making films, though, per se.
No, I think exactly the same. Poetry,
Poetry, novels even.
Novels. Yeah, well, novels work better with themes than film does.
Short films, you know.
I mean, yeah, I'm not a big fan of overpowering themes. I like my themes to be completely subtextual. And, you know, if I came up with something, I'm not gonna just come up with the theme first. I'm gonna come up with everything else and then realise, oh, that theme's in there, and then, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like Blackkklansman. It's like the film is screaming in your face, I've got something to say. And then the film ends, what did it have to say? Like, really, what did it have to say?
What did it have to say?
It acts like it's talking about human nature and the nature of existence. But I don't really feel like it summed any of it up.
Blade Runner 2049 is a bunch of scenes mixed together, which has taken so much from Ridley Scott that it's basically not even its own film. Because it's basically just trying to do the first Blade Runner, but that more modern edge where, you know, there doesn't need to be as much story as long as it looks, sounds, and the themes are good. But it feels like Denis Villeneuve was trying to make that and thought that was how you're supposed to do it. And the funny thing is, Ridley Scott wouldn't even have considered it for a second. He just made a film.
Just made a movie.
And that's ultimately the difference, isn't it? I mean, that's the difference for me. A reason why I don't really like many modern directors is for that reason. They don't do what the old directors did in terms of they're just directing what services their film best.
Yeah.
Now it is, you know, even when it doesn't need to be shot cinematically or crazily, we're just going to shoot it like that because that's easy. You know, passive viewers would think that's good.
It's Vogue, isn't it?
And it's stuff like, I mean, Enemy, Denis Villeneuve's other films so vapid.
Yeah, it really is.
It's
the thing that gets me most about films like that is that they're acting like they mean more than a normal film, than a story, but they mean less.
But the truth and the harsh truth is this: The Lone Ranger is a better film than Blade Runner 2049.
Oh
and if
my god!
It's true. It's true. It's the harsh truth, but it's true.
I'm gonna forgive you for that.
It's true because the direction is good, the soundtrack is good, and guess what? The story is good. There is an actual story with characters, and whilst it may be paint by numbers, whilst it may be derivative, it's an actual 3-act story with an ending.
With a beginning, middle, and end, and a wrap.
Blade Runner 2049 is basically French new wave, artsy, stupid, schlocky shit.
You know, when we're leading up to Harrison Ford's reveal, and it's literally, I want to say 10 minutes. I want to say borderline 10 minutes.
I don't know whether it's 10 minutes.
Shots of Ryan Gosling walking through orange-tinted rooms. Why? Literally why? Like, there's no reason for you to be wasting my time. I don't need to see all this stuff. And it's the same thing as when he was in, like, The Foundry, but that really is the worst instance of that.
Yeah.
It's nauseatingly slow.
It is.
And again, is it only slow because people think that's sort of clever, or what? Why is it so slow? I can't see any reason for it to be so slow. Can you?
No, I can't. I think it's one of the slowest films I've ever seen in my entire life.
Needlessly slow as well.
Needlessly slow, and I wouldn't have said that had they had a third act or even a second act.
It comes to nothing.
The fact that all of it comes to nothing. Joy is the most pointless waste of time I've ever seen, and that was done better in Her.
It really, really was done better in Her.
Neander Wallace. Really good idea for a villain, and it had it not even been a good idea for a villain, I would still hated it, because if you're not wrapping up a villain, no matter how bad they are, no matter if they've only appeared in 2 scenes, you wrap them up and you show us why this film was told, why this story was told.
Yeah.
But there's not a reason. Maybe it's just following Kay until his death. But I mean, why that point? Why that specific point?
If that is your story, why is Neander Wallace in the fucking film?
And why? Yeah, what relevance?
What was he doing?
But what relevance does the start of the story have to Kay that makes it any different from any other point? And why not start when he was a kid? You know what I mean? It just makes no sense. The story clearly that's being told has something to do with his humanity between him and his creator. It's obvious. It's staring you in the face, and instead you're worried about how orange this shot is going to be, and it's just God, it's mind-numbing.
It's not like we saw it, liked it, and then thought about it, and then it started to break down.
There was this visceral response,
visceral reaction. This isn't right.
Something's wrong. Yeah, I remember looking at the time during the final action sequence of being, but this is the henchman.
Yeah,
this is the person who's sort of coming after, doing the evil villain's dirty work.
Yeah. And that's the final.
And he reunites Deckard with his daughter, who's appeared in one scene.
Okay, I don't even want like a big fucking massive final battle. Just an emotional climax would do, you know.
A psychological. But no, that's exactly what I would have wanted.
Yeah,
and it would have serviced the first film a lot more. I'm just shocked that someone who was so, we want to do the same thing that the first film does.
They missed
Watch them back to back. They're not the same film. They're not even remotely the same film.
Miss the mark. If you want to see like a Denis Villeneuve film that tells a meaty, compelling story that wraps up well and actually means something and does have heady themes, but they're incidental to the story, watch Arrival. It's a better film than Blade Runner 2049. It's a better story than Blade Runner 2049. And it's based on a short story, which is very telling.
Blade Runner 2049 is the most overrated film I've ever watched in my entire life.
Possibly.
And it's not out of a point in terms of I think it's a bad film at all. It's out of the fact that I've never, ever, ever in my life seen something basically excuse itself to its audience for not being a proper story. And here, this was a pointless sequel that did harken back in some ways to the original, but also misunderstood it incredibly. I just feel like there's no competition. I really don't understand why people think 2049 is better.
No,
that's the main thing.
Above it. What would you rate 2049? Because it's almost impossible to rate.
It's impossible to rate for me. It's not a film.
It's not a film.
Really. No. It's not a film. But had it stood alone, it would be a film. But it's a sequel. It's a sequel to what was a very, iconic film. With one, subtextual theme throughout.
Yeah.
And this whole thing is just one stupidly on the nose, annoyingly pretentious, artsy theme.
Annoyingly slow.
Just the storytelling's artsy as well. No need for it. Stop the pretense. Give us what we want. Give us character. Give us narrative. Give us something.
Give us engaging characters. Give us a good mystery. Maybe we should rewatch it. See what we think.
Well, but it's not so much that beat to beat it could be all right. It's not that, because that's not my problem with it.
It's the overall structure.
It's the overall. You can't accept that film, and you certainly can't say it's better than the original, because the original is just it's a movie.
Now that we are the most hated people on the internet, I think our work here is...
Yeah. I don't know. I might find the Blade Runner 2049 fan page and send this to them.
Well, post this.
Yeah, and see what they think of it, because I think it's not been said enough. I don't know if they've not realised it.
It needs to be challenged.
It does. I spoke to so many people the day after I saw the film, and they didn't believe that I could genuinely have flaws with it. They wouldn't take it even. They were like, my voice wasn't being heard at all, just because...
They wouldn't even listen.
Yeah, it's like, you can't. You can't! Did you see that shot? With smoke, and it was huge, and it was atmospheric, and it lasted for like 20 seconds? Yes, I did see that shot, and that's exactly the problem. I think they were trying so hard to be... to do what Ridley Scott did for that film.
But they're not doing what Ridley Scott did.
No, because Ridley Scott literally read the book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and, just said, I'm adapting that. That's really cool. That's fun.
Yeah, good ideas.
Yeah. And it turned out from his audience that was a masterpiece. Whereas this film wants to be a masterpiece, and people believed it, and people lapped it up like it was goat's milk.
Did.
And it's ridiculous.
Because they felt intelligent.
Yeah, because they feel better. Well, guess what? I'm not ashamed. I consider myself a very intelligent person, and I'm not ashamed that I like Pirates 5 more than that film. With my heart, I love that film more. That's why I wanted to be a screenwriter. Yeah, much more than why fucking Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah. Oh, I'm kind of exhausted.
Yeah.
That was... Episode 1 of Cyberschlock.
Cyberschlock. Well, it'd still be called SchlockGANG, but...
I'm fucking tired.
Yeah. 2 hours, Jesus. Anyway, goodbye.
Goodbye, YouTube. Lynch us in the morning, won't you?
Please don't. Oh, well, maybe. I would love to hear people's thoughts about Blade Runner 2049 and to have a conversation... Because I beg people now, after watching this review, to watch the film and feel the same. Because there are plot holes. They're confused. They don't know what they're doing. And they're supposed to be Hollywood directors and writers and everything, and it just baffles me. It baffles me. It really does. But yeah, see you next time.
No wonder it flopped with audiences.
Well, yeah, I don't know who it's for. It's for film study students.
It's for film students.
Yeah.
It's for people who make video essays on YouTube.
Yeah, genuinely, though, that's who it's for.
It really is.
That's who it's for. But you want to see Blade Runner 2049 be good, watch the first one. That's all I have to say. Anyway.
Out.